So the Los Angeles Lakers are playing against the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals. We are currently getting ready for what could be a very entertaining series, and it looks like we're gonna get it, with the Heat quickly jumping out to a 13-point lead, and then as quickly as it happened, the Lakers come back and start curb stomping them, to the point where LeBron James is doing this, mid-game, at 35 years old. That combined with the injuries to Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Goran Dragic, and you have a series where the outcome is pretty much already decided. And I'll admit, alright, Laker fans, I was wrong, okay? This team is not going to give you problems, especially now that both Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic are both questionable to return to the series. But all this has done is spark a conversation that we often see when things like this happen. Will this championship have an asterisk? Now, coming into the bubble, people already thought it would because of the circumstances, there being no fans and therefore no home court advantage. And all these injuries have done is bring back that conversation and lead people to say that this ring will either not count or count less. But if we're being completely honest, what does this even mean? Because people have said this in the past, they'll continue to say it in the future, and either way, it will still count the same in the record books. And going back to the past, you can make the case that a lot of other championships can have an asterisk on them if we really wanted them to. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing championships from the past, some arguments for them not counting the same, and that will lead us to the same conclusion, that putting an asterisk on a ring is stupid. But before we begin, if you're new here, I'm Double D. I'm a huge basketball fan and I make NBA videos here on YouTube. So if you're also an NBA fan, or just a basketball fan in general, feel free to hit the sub button, and click the bell to be notified when I upload more videos just like this one. Alright, let's get into the video. Okay, so starting right away, I feel like I should mention once again that I don't think any ring has an asterisk. And in fact, I'm about to debunk a lot of the reasoning that people use for specific championships. Some involving Golden State, obviously, but also others that you may only think about occasionally. So let's start with the recent Warriors teams, in order. Because this is undoubtedly what you will see people talking about most of the time because of the circumstances for each championship. For 2015, there was no Kevin Love, and Kyrie Irving only played one game. For 2017, you had the play where Zaza creates the landing zone rule, where the Spurs were up by 23 and the Warriors would come back and win. And then you have 2018 where the Rockets lose Chris Paul to his patented hamstring injury in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. So let's go through all of these. For starters, the 2015 Finals, I feel like people get the impression that because the Warriors were struggling against this team for 3 or so games, this being games 1 through 3, this means that the Warriors would have either had no chance or would have lost to the Cavs, which I think the thought that they would have had no chance is ridiculous given that they both had equal odds to win the finals coming into the playoffs, but it does make more sense to say that the Cavs would have probably won the finals. But another thing we need to realize is the fact that due to the lack of Kyrie Irving on the floor, the Cavs got way better on defense against the Warriors. And we saw that specifically with Steph Curry and Matthew Dellavedova, because not only did the Cavs take Game 2, but they also took Game 3 in an effort that led people to believing that LeBron James could actually take out this team after losing his second and third best players. The thing to keep in mind though was the fact that Golden State had to adjust because the Cavs were doing such a great job of slowing them down. A lot of it was to do with Steph Curry because the only 2 games where they lost were games where he didn't play well. Because while he shot 50% and hit 7 threes in Game 3, a lot of those points didn't come until the second half, where as soon as he started heating up, the Warriors cut a 20-point lead down to 1 in just over 11 minutes of playtime. It is also worth noting that Cleveland was doing such a great job of shutting down Golden State's bigs that Golden State actually abandoned playing them altogether. In Game 4, Steve Kerr started the famous death lineup, which consisted of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green, and Harrison Barnes, where everyone except Steph is reliable on defense against nearly everybody the Cavs had to play in that series. On top of that, their offensive ability and ability to space the floor created so many problems for Cleveland's defense, as bigs such as Timothy Mozgov and Tristan Thompson were vulnerable having to guard players that could space the floor. And so from there, Golden State took control of the series and eventually won. I cut that a little short because I realized how much time I had been spending on that series when we still have others to get to. So bottom line, there's no telling what could have happened in the 2015 finals with Kyrie and Kevin Love there, because while they provided a lot of of offense, their defense was worse with them on the court. Cleveland's defensive rating in the regular season games against Golden State that season was 109.3. In the finals, it was 107.3. And in the first 3 games of the series, it was 101.6. So there's a very clear difference there. But moving on. So 2017 and 2018, I'm not even gonna spend as much time here because I've already talked about both on this channel, and the Warriors' status of being unbeatable has changed so many times since then, to the point where you will hear people say that they're the greatest team ever, nobody had a chance, we all knew who was gonna win coming into the season, then turn around and say they only won because of injuries. I don't get it either. But let's start with 2017. Kawhi Leonard was having his best playoff run ever up until that point, mainly due to this being the first season where he was undoubtedly the leader of the team with Tim Duncan retiring. And he was going off. The Spurs jumped out to a 23-point lead in Game 1 before Zaza happened, and Kawhi misses the rest of the series while the Spurs get swept. Now, I personally have no idea how this narrative happened, because if people were watching the game, they would know that really the only people who were scoring in the first half were Steph Curry and Kevin Durant for Golden State. On top of this, the Spurs were shooting 57% in the game and actually shot 4 for 5 in the third quarter before he got injured. Like, that was it. They were literally just making everything. And so when Golden State went on their run and clamped up on defense, which they routinely did all season long, especially in the third quarter, you start to see where it fell apart for San Antonio. But it didn't completely fall apart because they still held a 10-point lead going into the fourth. But what I'm trying to figure out is how people can say Kawhi would have led the Spurs past Golden State, because that doesn't really make any sense. They were only up big in Game 1, which they were shooting nearly 60% before he got injured, and after he went out, they couldn't even compete anymore. In Games 2 through 4, they lost by an average of 21 points. Like, this isn't 2015 where it was just, oh, it could have gone either way. Like, they literally couldn't do anything once he was out. And so there's that. But then we move on to 2018, and Houston fans are going to be in the comments for this one. So the Rockets trade for Chris Paul, and are immediately regarded as one of the teams expected to be competing for a championship. We get to the playoffs, and they actually have a better record than Golden State by winning 65 games compared to Golden State's 58. They eventually meet in the playoffs, and to almost everyone's surprise, they eventually jump out to a 3-2 series lead. However, with just a minute left in Game 5, Chris Paul goes down and gets back up holding his hamstring, and it would later be determined that he had suffered a strained hamstring. And so from there, the narrative was pretty much written that, oh, Golden State gets lucky with injuries again. Now, if we would have just came out and destroyed them in Game 6 and 7, I would probably agree, but when you start to look at what actually happened, you realize very quickly that Houston had chances. They just weren't able to close. In Game 6, the Rockets held a 39-22 lead at the end of the first quarter. And while Golden State did cut into the lead, they still trailed by 10 at halftime. In the second half, the Warriors outscored the Rockets 64-25. They outscored them 31-9 in the fourth quarter. Houston shot 49% in the first half and 29% in the second. So yeah, that happened. But then we move on to Game 7. My god, Game 7. When the Rockets are at home and once again jump out to a big lead, leading by 15 at one point in the second quarter. And then the biggest collapse in a single playoff game happens. They missed 27 straight threes. Do you want to know what the odds of that happening were? It is 1 in 72,000, which not only are you more likely to make the NBA than they were to miss that many threes in a row, you are literally 7 times more likely to be injured by the toilet in your house. That is how unlikely that actually was. So literally every time I see someone bring up Chris Paul, I just say the same thing every single time. Google 1 in 72,000 chance. And so the Warriors win the series and go on to win the ring. And Houston would eventually try to audit the ring, which was absolutely hilarious because they did it over a year later, but we're not going to talk about that. And so that's pretty much the video. I was originally planning on talking about other championships that people say have an asterisk, but this video is long enough already, so I'm just going to briefly touch on them here. Okay, so 2019 Raptors. They were one of the best defenses in the league, and we went cold in Game 4, which was what even put us in that situation. So, no. So 2010. Now, you may be confused about this one, but you might be surprised to find out that they're actually Celtics fans. Well, certain Celtics fans that bring up Kendrick Perkins being injured. And some of you may also be surprised to find out that at one point, Kendrick Perkins was actually a good player. But Boston still held a 13-point lead in the third quarter and completely lost it. The 2002 Lakers. Now, this is actually an interesting one because while the disgraced ref Tim Donaghy was officiating Game 6 of the series, and that's been regarded as one of the most questionable games of all time due to the Lakers shooting 27 free throws in the fourth quarter, the Kings still had a chance in Game 7, and they shot terribly. Now, overall, they didn't actually shoot that bad, but the problem comes when you see that they actually shot 2 for 20 from 3. And it wasn't just that they were missing. They were missing wide open threes. Like, some of them weren't even hitting the rim. And so I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is the fact that you can very easily find a way to just write off a championship as an asterisk. But you can also easily find something that went wrong in the series that may have actually led to the outcome. And so I don't want to hear any more of this, oh, this year's ring doesn't count, because there are so many championships that you can point to where you can say something just like that. The Lakers are one of the best teams in the league, if not the best, and they've shown it all playoffs. And this series will be no different. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell to be notified when I upload, comment down below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.